The other item that I want us now to address are the formalities in hire purchase transactions. What does the law provide? What does the law require of the parties in a hire purchase transaction to comply with if the hire purchase transaction is going to be recognized as a valid transaction? So formalities in hire purchase agreement. If I would take you back to our first topic under business law, one of the things we said when we were classifying contracts is that there are some contracts that are classified as formal contracts or written contracts, and these were contracts that must be contained in some formal document. And we gave hire purchase agreements as one of the examples of the formal contracts. So what are these formalities that are required by the law of these hire purchase transactions? Now, one of these requirements is in relation to cash price, and the idea is the Hire Purchase Act requires that the owner gives notice. The owner gives notice to the hirer of the cash price of these goods. And this is intended for information purposes. Let the hirer know how much they would need to pay if they were to take these goods on cash basis. Let them know the difference. Let them be able to justify the hiring charge, that they're thinking, if this is the extra that I would now need to pay, is it worth it? Is it a reasonable charge over the period of credit that this owner is going to afford me? The other requirement in relation to hire purchase transactions is that the law requires the writing of hire purchase agreements, that every time we enter into a hire purchase transaction between the owner and the hirer of the goods, this transaction must be in written form. Now, they will have a standard document that they are going to fill, which document has some standard contents to include in their writing. Of course, you would expect that the names of the parties will be captured. That is the name of the hirer, the name of the owner of the goods. Besides this, we would also be expecting a description. We would expect a description of the goods. Now, this description has to be so detailed, so sufficient that it is possible for us to identify the goods that form the subject matter of our agreement. The other content is that they have to include the hirer's rights. The hirer's rights in the hire purchase agreement have to be captured. They will also need to indicate the hire purchase price. This will also be broken down so that we also shown the deposit payable on taking these goods. They will also show the amount of installments, and dates they are payable. They will show the amount of installments and the dates these installments will be payable. The hire purchase agreement would also indicate the cash price, of the goods. And then we would also expect to have this hire purchase agreement being dated, and then there will be signatures of the parties. This being a formal contract requiring to be written, this will be some of the contents that we expect to appear to be captured by the parties in their hire purchase agreement. Now, beyond the requirement to have this agreement being in written form, the Hire Purchase Act requires of the parties to also ensure that the hire purchase agreement has been registered with the registrar of hire purchase transactions. So the third formality that goes with these transactions is registration. That upon being executed, then the onus is on the owner of the goods to ensure registration of this hire purchase agreement with the registrar of hire purchase transaction. Now, the registration of this hire purchase agreement will be so consequential that the statute goes on to give the effects, the results, the resulting effect of the parties not registering the hire purchase agreement. We can capture some of them. Effects of non-registration. What is going to happen if the parties to the hire purchase agreement do not register this hire purchase agreement? Now, one of the bad things that is going to happen to our hire purchase agreement is that the HPA, the hire purchase agreement, is not enforceable. That will be so bad on the part of the owner mostly that they can't enforce this hire purchase agreement, and of course the hirer as well, that once they have failed on this important formality, then their contract becomes unenforceable. Because this is a formality that is a requirement of the law, if that has not been met, then this contract becomes unenforceable. The other effect is that the owner loses their right. The owner loses their right to repossess. The owner loses their right to repossess the goods. That the right of repossession by the owner. If the hirer is unable to pay the goods, then usually the owner has a right to repossess these goods. If this hire purchase agreement had not been registered, then this right of repossession is usually not enforceable. The other consequence of not registering is that any security given is not enforceable. And the same thing works for guarantees, that any guarantees provided on these hire purchase transactions are not, or rather is not enforceable. So the securities and guarantees are given towards securing the interests of the owner. So if such registration has not been done, then the security and the guarantee become unenforceable. So if you look at these consequences, they are seen to be more harsh on the part of the owner, and that's why the owner will be very much interested in ensuring that their hire purchase agreement has been registered to avoid all these bad effects being occasioned by the non-registration of the hire purchase agreement.
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to get yourself a copy of our professionally prepared study text and revision partners. Visit our shop along Tom Boyer Street, Pioneer House, 3rd floor, opposite Fire Station.